Welcome to this section where we'll be exploring Redux Toolkit to enhance our data management system. Understanding Redux Toolkit is essential for React Native developers as it provides powerful tools for efficient state management and enabling creation of robust and scalable applications. Until now, our data management relied on useState hook and props directly set up on our screens. However, with Redux Toolkit, we'll take a significant step forward in managing our application state in a more organized and centralized manner. In this section, we'll not only focus on learning Redux Toolkit, but also set up the necessary data for donation application. We'll provide users with a comprehensive list of items they can donate to and will enable them to view detailed information about each donation item. Building upon the components we created in the previous section, we'll integrate them into donation application to ensure a visually stunning and user-friendly interface. By leveraging the components we've already set up, we'll create an awesome-looking application that engages and delights users. Throughout the lectures, we'll dive into Redux Toolkit's core concepts, covering topics such as creating slices, combining reducers, configuring the store, working with actions, and persisting the store. Simultaneously, we'll work on retrieving the list of donation items and enabling users to navigate to each item and view additional information. We'll utilize the powerful data management capabilities of Redux Toolkit to efficiently handle and display the data within our application. By the end of this section, you'll have a fully functional donation application that not only looks impressive, but also provides users with a seamless experience when exploring and interacting with donation items. Mastering Redux Toolkit and building a robust data management system in donation application are valuable skills for React Native developers. Whether you're seeking employment or working on personal projects, you're definitely going to need this knowledge. Get ready to combine the power of Redux Toolkit with the visually appealing components we've built to create an outstanding donation application. Let's dive in, set up the data, and make our application shine. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Hi everyone, and welcome to this video on the introduction of Redux. In this video, I'll be discussing why it's important to have a tool like Redux for managing your data in a React Native app, and also why you should consider using the newer tool called Redux Toolkit. In a React Native app, managing data can quickly become complex and overwhelming as the app grows. We don't want to be losing data, and we don't want to reuse the data that we have as much as we can. We also sometimes need access to the same kind of data from components and screens. This is where a tool like Redux comes in, providing a centralized place for managing your app state and data. Redux is a popular state management library that helps you manage the state of your React Native app in a predictable way. The core of Redux is the store, which is a single source of truth for your app state. The store can only be updated by dispatching actions, which are objects that describe what happened in your app. Redux has several benefits, including predictable state management, because Redux follows strict rules for how the store can be updated, making it easier to understand how your app state is changing. Another advantage of using Redux is that it can be easily debugged. As Redux has a centralized way of managing data, it is easier to find and fix problems in your app. And this also makes it easier to manage and update your data because it is a centralized place. The actions and reducers in Redux can be reused across your app, reducing duplication of your code. However, the disadvantage of Redux is that it has a steep learning curve and can be verbose, leading to an increase in boilerplate code. And this is where Redux Toolkit comes in. Redux Toolkit is a set of tools and utilities for Redux that make it even easier to use. It provides several advantages over Redux, including easy setup and configuration, since it provides a streamlined setup process and removes the need for manual configuration. Reduced boilerplate is another advantage, as the utilities provided by Redux Toolkit simplify common tasks and reduce the amount of code you need to write. And in general, you will have an improved experience when using Redux, as the Redux Toolkit is improved, making it easier for developers to understand and use Redux in their projects. We'll be using the donation app to develop our Redux skills and see specific use cases of Redux in action. This will give you a practical understanding of how Redux works and how you can use it in your own projects. In conclusion, Redux and Redux Toolkit are both essential tools for managing data in a React Native app. They provide a centralized place for managing your state and data, making it easier to debug and understand what's happening in your application. The store in Redux serves as a single source of truth, and dispatching actions allows you to update the store in a predictable manner. Redux Toolkit improves upon regular Redux by reducing boilerplate code and improving the developer experience. In the next video, we'll be installing Redux Toolkit, so stay tuned. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be installing Redux Toolkit for our donation app application. If you haven't followed along in the last section, don't worry about it. You're going to be able to download the whole application that we developed together in this section. So get it downloaded if you don't have it already, and come back to this video to set up Redux Toolkit with us. So for this, you're going to be needing a terminal, and we're going to navigate to the root of our donation app project. And here we're going to be following the rules that is set up for us in the Redux website that will make it easier for us to install Redux. So I'm going to make this window smaller so that you see what I'm following exactly. And I'm going to be using npm since that's what we have been using for our project. And I'm just going to copy this command and paste it here. Great. So this has been installed already. And then I'm just going to go ahead and install Redux in our project as well. Great. That has been done as well. And then we're just going to follow the complementary packages that we might need. So let's install React Redux. And let's also install the DevTools here. And I'm pretty sure we don't need the pod installation, but I'm going to go ahead and install pods anyways. I do this anytime I install anything new, just in case. And there is no pods to install, so this is great. And we should now be ready to use Redux in our project. We're not going to be trying it out right now because there are some things I want to explain to you. So if you want to follow along, please come back to the next video. I can't wait to see you there. Thanks so much for listening. Hi, and welcome back to our React Native and Redux Toolkit series. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the core concepts in Redux Toolkit called slices. A slice in Redux Toolkit refers to a self-contained piece of state and logic for managing that state. In other words, a slice is a part of the overall state of your application that you want to manage in a modular way. So I do want to provide an example for our donation app. For example, you want to keep data and state about a logged in user in a separate module so that you have all the information about the user in a separate module. So let's say that Azari is the one that's logged in. You could have their first name, their last name, and their user ID stored in a separate module, and any updates for the user is going to be happening in that slice. Another example of a slice that we could create in our donation mobile application could be the categories that are used for our donation items and the donation item list itself. We could have another slice for managing a single donation item so that we could create this singular screen where an information about single donation item is displayed. So slices are useful in Redux because it provides an improved code structure for your application. They help you to structure your code in a clear and organized way, making it easier to understand and maintain. Now I want to go over how you might create a slice in your React Native project. So for that, we are going to create a new directory in our donation application called Redux. And here we're going to create another directory that is going to be called reducers. And these reducers are the ones that are going to include all of the slices that we're going to create for our project. So the first one that I'm going to create is going to be the simplest one, and I'm going to call it user.js. And in order to create a slice, you might need to import create slice from Redux.js toolkit. And we already have that installed. And let's call our slice user. And this user is going to use create slice method that we just imported, and it's going to have several options. The first option that we're going to give it is its name. And the name of the slice is used to identify it in the Redux store. So let's give this a name of user. The second option that we want to give it is initial state. And this initial state is going to be the initial state for every user that we're going to create. So, for example, for this purpose, we can create initial state object right above this. And let's say that this user is going to have a first name, and the first name is going to be Nata because my name is Nata. You can write your own first name here. And then there's going to be a last name, and mine is Vacheishvili. It's a last name from Georgia because I'm Georgian. You can create any last name that you want. It can be yours, it can be your friend's. Doesn't really matter. And let's say that this user has a user ID, and I'll just say it is 1 for now. And then you're going to have something called reducers here. And reducers is going to be an object that's going to have bunch of actions in a form of functions. So reducers are functions that update the state of the slice in response to actions. So here, let's say that our action is going to be updating first name. So to update first name, we're going to get the state of our slice. It might have changed from initial state, or it might be the same as initial state, depends on when you're using this function. And then it's going to also contain an action that is going to contain some kind of data that you might want to pass to it. So in order to update the state of the first name, we're just going to say state dot first name action dot payload that contains the information that we sent to the reducer function. And let's call it first name. Great. So this is all about creating slice. Now, if you want to be able to use this function from your screens, what you have to do is export them. So let's export update first name. And let's say that we're exporting it from user.actions. So it's going to grab it exactly from here. See, when I click into here, this is the function that is highlighted by my editor. And then we also want to export the user as well, because later on, we are going to be using this user for combined reducer function so that we set up our store so that we make it available to all of our screens and components. But I'm not going to get into that yet because I don't want to make this complicated. So let's finish here for today. And thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. And we're going to be going over much more tools that Redux offers to us. Hi, and welcome back to our series on React Native and Redux Toolkit. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the most important concepts in Redux Toolkit called combining reducers. In Redux, a reducer is a function that updates the state of your application in response to an action. And we just created one in the last video. But as your application grows in complexity, you may find yourself with many different reducers, each managing its own part of the state. Like we could have a user reducer, we could have a single donation reducer, we could have all of the donations reducers, and it might get complicated to manage all of these. So you might want to combine all of these into a single root reducer. And combining reducers is useful because it improves your code organization. And with multiple reducers, managing different parts of the state will be easier and your code will be easier to understand and maintain. Also, you will write more modular code, and by breaking down the state management into smaller pieces, you can write more modular and reusable code. And it offers you a better scalability because as your application grows, you can add new reducers to manage new parts of the state, making it easier to scale your application. So let's use the combine reducer function right now. Let's create a new file inside our Redux folder called store.js. And here we're going to import combine reducers from Redux.js toolkit actually. So Redux.js toolkit. Great. And then we are going to import our individual reducers. And we only have one so far. So let's import user from reducers user.js file. And then let's create a root reducer constant. And we're going to be using combined reducers. And we're going to say that we're defining just one reducer called user, and it's going to use the user's reducer. And actually what we could do is go to our user file and just export user.reducer by default. And we're not going to have to type this for each of our modular imports in here. So that's it for creating root reducer. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use this root reducer to tie our reducers to our screens. So for that, we're going to need to configure our store, and we're going to go over how to configure our store in the next video. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next video. Hi, and welcome back to our series on React Native and Redux Toolkit. Today, we're going to be talking about how to configure the store using the combined reducers that we created in the last video. So for this, what we're going to have to do is import configure store from Redux.js toolkit. And then below our root reducer, we're going to create another constant, and we're going to call it store. And we're going to use this configure store function to provide our root reducer. And then what we're going to do is we're going to export this store by default. And I just want to explain what the configure store function is. The configure store function takes an object as an argument where you can specify the initial state of your application, as well as any middleware and enhancers that you want to use. And in this example, we're just specifying the combined reducers as the only required option. And we're providing it the root reducer that we created here. Now, if you want to use your reducer, you can certainly do so. For this, all you need to do is go to app.js file here, app.tsx file for me, actually. And we're just going to import provider from React Redux. And then we're going to place all of our code inside this provider so that we can provide the values of our store. And we're just going to say store, and we're going to give it the store that we just exported from our store.js file. And let's put all of our code inside this provider. And now we have access to the store. So if we just go to our home screen, for example, and inside here, we use a header component that we defined, imported from our components. Now we know that we need to give it a title, and let's just give it a title of Nata for now. Let's save this and make sure that it displays on our simulator, and it does. And if we want to tie our header to the reducer that we created here, we're going to have to use something called use selector. So let's import that from React Redux. And let's create a selector called user. And we're going to use selector to get the state of our app. And the specific one that we want to get is user. We could get the user's information using user.firstname and last name and all of that. But let's just get the whole object here. And if we console log user here, go to our terminal, we're going to see everything that we defined in our reducer in here, which means that it is ready for us to be used anytime in any component, whether it is header inside the header component, whether it is inside other components like badges, tabs, whatever. You can use selector anywhere and grab the state from your reducers anytime you want. So instead of not here, what I'm going to do is use our selector, and I'm going to say user.firstname plus user.lastname. That's what I want this to show. I'm going to save it. And here we're going to see Nata will usually appear here. It would be better if I had space in between. And great. This is how you configure your store and then make it provide all of the values from your store to your screens or any components that you want. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Hi, and welcome back. Today, what I want to explain to you is how to use the reducer actions that we have defined here. For example, update first name in order to update the first name given here. So we're going to be updating Nata to something else. So for that, we're going to need some kind of event happening. And because of that, I'm going to import pressable. And inside this pressable, I'm going to put a text from React Native. And it's going to say, press me to change first name. Great. So in order to send an request to update the first name, we're going to have to use something called dispatch. So let's create it here so that we dispatch an action. Great. And the way we use this is on press, we're going to say dispatch update first name. And we're going to give it an object, first name, and we're going to say that we're changing the first name to N. Let's import this from our reducers, save this, and now let's press here. And we see that my first name was updated to N, and it wasn't only updated. In response to the update, my title changed as well. So we are able to track all of the state changes and make the updates to our screens according to that. So if I console log the user now, you are going to see that my first name is actually changed from Nata to N. And if I reload this, my first name is going to be changed back to Nata. And for us to avoid something like this, just in case user goes out of the application and does something else and comes back, or user completely quits the application and comes back in, we don't want to recess to initial state that was defined in the reducers. We're going to have to use something called persister. And we're going to go to that in the next videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hi, and welcome back. Today, I want to talk to you about Redux Logger. That is a middleware for Redux that logs actions and previous and next states to the console. This is going to be helpful for you to keep state of what actions are happening in your apps and how your state is changing according to that. So to do that, we're going to need a logger for our Redux. So let's go to the root of our project. And then let's do npm install Redux logger. It should be very quick. Yep, it's done. And then we're going to import this logger from Redux logger. It doesn't need the source. Great. And now we're going to say that we need a new middleware that is going to get the default middleware and is going to return the default middleware plus our logger. Okay. So what's the issue here? We need function here. Great. And then what we're going to do is go back to our app or home file. And I'm going to open up our terminal. Okay, let's reload the application. And I'm going to press this right now, and you're going to see what's going to happen. So we have something happening here. Okay. So we have logged our previous state, and it tells everything to us about the store. Okay. It says that we have a store user, and its first name was Nata, and last name was Vacheshvili, and user ID was 1. But then an action happened, and we sent a payload with an object of first name N, which happened from here exactly. And then the type was user update first name, which is right here. And then next state generated from this section is user, and its first name became N, last name was Bachaishvili, and user ID is 1. So this helps you keep track of any changes happening to your store. Whether you want to use it is up to you or not. I actually don't like logging so many things. So all I'm going to do is just comment out these lines. But if you want to use it, it's up to you. Since you're a beginner, this will be a great help to you. So I wanted to show you that this exists so that you're able to track where your errors or bugs might be coming from. Thanks so much for listening. In the next video, we're going to talk about persisting the state when user makes different actions, such as forcing to quit your app. See you in the next video. Hi, and welcome back to this video series about React Native and Redux. Today, we're going to be exploring what Redux persist is and how we can use it to persist the values that are in our stores, even on app reload. So Redux persist is a popular library used to persist the state of a React Native application. The state of an application is the data that represents its current state, such as a user data or app settings. Without persistence, this data would be lost every time the app is reloaded. So for example, if I press here and then I go to my Metro bundler and I reload the app, my name is going to be changed back to nada. So with Redux persist, we can ensure that the data remains saved even after an app reload. This is important for improving the user experience and making sure that the app is functional even after restarting it. Now we're going to be configuring Redux persist in our React Native app. And for storage, we're going to be using something called async storage. We're going to get into what async storage is and how we can use it a bit later. But for now, let's install Redux persist. To do that, just go to the root of your application and then do npm install Redux persist. Great. Now that that's done, we can start creating the configuration. But before we jump into that, we're going to have to install async storage as well. And to do that, we're going to have to run npm install React Native async storage /async storage. And we're going to have to wait for the execution. Great. And we're also going to have to install the pods. So let's go into iOS folder and do pod install. Great. And now that these are done, I would like to close the Metro bundler that's running here and the simulator as well. And I'm going to do npm start reset cache. Whoops, I missed 2 dashes here. So it would be like this. And then I'm going to press I to open the iOS simulator. And now we have everything ready to get started with the configuration. So here, I'm just going to put these together because they are coming from the same library. And then I'm going to import async storage from React Native's async storage. And then I'm also going to import 2 functions, one of them called persist reducer, and the other one called persist store. So let's go into what async storage is. Async storage is a simple, unencrypted, asynchronous, and persistent key value storage system that is global to the app. It is used to store the data that needs to persist even if the app is closed, such as user preferences or settings. Async storage is the recommended storage solution for use with Redux persist, as it is a fast and efficient way and a great choice for our application. So the next step is configuring Redux persist, and we're going to have to use persist reducer function. And this function is used to wrap our reducers, which are responsible for updating the state of our app inside this function. So this function will ensure that the state of our app is saved and retrieved from storage correctly. So we're going to have to create a new constant here called persisted reducer. And what we're going to do is we're going to use persist reducer And we're going to have to pass some kind of configuration. So we're going to have to set up the configuration. And let's call the key in the key value store the root. And for storage, we're going to be using async storage. And just for versioning, if we need to set up something later, let's call this version 1. And then we're going to pass the configuration here. And then we're also going to give it the root reducer for persisting. So now that we have all of this set up in the reducer, we're going to pass the persisted reducer instead of root reducer. And what we're also going to do is we're going to persist store. So to do that, we're just also going to export persister. So let's create it. Let's call it export const persister. And it's going to use persist store function, and we're going to pass it the store. The persist store function is used to create a store that can persist our state. And this function creates a store that is capable of saving and retrieving data from storage, ensuring that our app state remains saved even after an app is reloaded. Because of all of this setup, we might need to enable our middleware, and we might need to make sure our values are serialized. Instead of doing that, let's keep the serializable check by passing this option here, and we should be good to go. And to make sure that we are using this persister, we're going to have to go to our app here, and we're going to have to use persist gate. And our persister will be the persister that we just created. Okay, let's import persister from store. And then we're going to say loading is null. And let's put all of our code inside here. Let's save this. And now if I click here, my first name is changed. And if I reload this, my first name will remain changed. So this is how you can persist the values even after app reload. And this is going to provide a better user experience and ensure that the app continues to function as expected, even if the user force quits the app or reloads the app. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hi friends, and welcome back to our video tutorials about using Redux with our donation app. Today, we're actually going to dive into creating the homepage for our application. And we're going to start off by using this header container here so that it appears for our application on the homepage. So from the last videos, I've cleaned up this file and I've only left the dispatch and user and the safe area view. The rest we're just going to build together. And also I got rid of all the imports that we technically did not need. So let's get started with this. The first thing that we're going to have to do is create a view container for our header. So let's do that. And I'm going to create a style for this, and I'm going to call it header because that's what it is. And I'm going to import view from here. And then I'm also going to need import of style from our styles. And I'm going to put all these styles together and all the library imports together. So then what we're going to do is actually we're going to place a text given here that's hello inside here. So let's do that. Let's create text and let's say hello, comma, and let's import text component as well and save this. So now once we look at this, we right away understand that we don't have the dimensions for the paddings and margins set up. So we're going to apply that directly to our header. And also if we look at our homepage, we're going to see that this is scrollable and we need a scroll view for that as well. So let's create the scroll view first and put this inside the scroll view. And we're just going to say that vertical indicator should be false because I don't really want to see it. I don't know about you. And then I'm going to put my view container inside here. And then I'm going to apply the styles that we need for the header. And for that, I'm going to go to the styles for our home. And then I'm going to say that here we need a header style, and let's see the dimensions that we need. So from this to the top, there's a margin top of 20. So let's define that. We're going to say margin top vertical scale 20. And then let's see what's the horizontal one. It's 24. So we're going to need margin horizontal scale 24. Great. Now this is perfectly visible, but it does have a different styling for the font. So let's come up with something. Let's call this style, let's say header intro text. And let's check out what font styling they have for this. So as always, they are using font family of Inter. Their font size is scale font size 16, and their line height is scale font size 19. And they have a font weight as well, which is 400. And they have a special color that we're going to copy and paste here. Let's get rid of this new line. And now we need to apply this header intro text to this text here. So let's say style header intro text. And this is great. These are very similar. And then we also need to use our header component that we created together. So let's import that from our components. And then let's say that title is going to be something that we're going to use from our user here. So I'm going to say user.firstname plus space user.lastname's first character. Okay. And then we need a dot, and then we need this emoji here. So I'm just going to copy this emoji from here and paste it here. Great. So this looks pretty similar to this, except for the fact that we need some spacing in between these two. So I'm going to see what that is. That is 5. So we're going to need some styling for the header. But the thing is, because this is a custom component, I can't just apply styles to this. So I'm going to have to put it in a view container. And I'm going to have to come up with some name for this style. I'm going to call it username. And then I'm going to create this username. Whoops, I don't need closing here. And I'm going to copy this username and going to paste it here. And I'm going to say that margin top is vertical scale of 5. And now we see this spacing here. And then we also see that there's a profile image given here, and I don't really want to download it and put it in our folders. So what I'm going to do is use an URI for it. And I'm going to put URI here, and I'm going to say that profile image should be present here, and its value is something that I'm just grabbing from the internet. Okay. So let's save this. And now that I've saved this in the initial state, I want you to see something, okay? So let's go to our homepage here, and I'm going to console log the user information here, and I'm going to open the terminal, and I'm going to reload this. And here we're going to see that the profile image is actually not present here. So it says that my profile image was present in the previous state, but then somehow it was updated to the next state, and basically this was lost. And this is because our initial state was already set up a long time ago, and our storage is already filled with the following states that we worked on in our last videos. So if we want to update our initial state and go back to our initial state so that we're able to see this profile image later, what we're going to have to do is create a new function and call it reset to initial state. And usually people have this function available in their reducers. Always set it up once you create a reducer for anything. So to set up and change back to initial state, all you need to do is return initial state, and then you would need to export this function to be able to use it. And here, I'm quickly going to dispatch that action to change my state. And then I'm going to have to import this quick. I'm going to save this. And now my initial state and the user will show the profile image that I created. So technically I can just get rid of this now because my reducer contains the information that I need. Great. So now what we need to do is create an image here. and that image is going to be coming from the React Native. Then it's going to need a URI, and I'm going to use user.profileImage URI for this. And then I'm going to have to set some styling definitely so that we're able to see this image. So I'm going to call that styling file image. And then we're going to need a resize mode that is going to be of type contained, so that it's contained inside the dimensions that we define for this image. So let's create this profile image style. And let's see what it needs. So it needs a height and width of 50. So I'm just going to say width is horizontal scale 50 and height is vertical scale 50. So now we should be able to see this. And if we compare, we are seeing that all of these are shown in a column and we want them to be in a row and we want some space in between these. So with the terms that I'm talking about already, you might guess that we need a flex box here. So we're going to say that we need a flex direction of row. And then if we see this here, we're going to see that some stuff is messed up for us. And this is because we don't have the view container set up correctly. We want these to be in a column. We only want this whole container and this picture to be in a row together. And to fix that, all we need is to create a view container for both of these. And now they are in a column. And we also know that we want these items next to each other to be vertically centered. So for that, what we're going to need to do is use align items, because now our items are in a row, which means that our cross axis is going to be needing align items. So let's do align items center, and now they are vertically centered. And then what we need is justify content space between, so that there is space between these items. And this is looking very good, I must say, very close to what we have here, but with a different profile image, which is totally fine. We could actually use the search box right in this tutorial, because this should be very simple to define because we have a component for that already. So I'm going to create a view and I'm going to style this view with a style of search box. And this search box is going to be needed so that we have the margin horizontal setup here. And let's import the search that we created together in the pass module. Let's save this. And here we see that we haven't created the style, so there is no margin horizontal. So let's create that and say margin horizontal is needed, and it is going to be 24. And this is looking much better. It also needs a margin top of 20. So let's do that as well with vertical scaling of 20. Great. And it also needs a placeholder text that we haven't set up. So let's go to the search component and let's say that we need a placeholder that is by default going to be search. Otherwise, it's going to be whatever the user passes. So let's make sure that we accept the prop type of string here that is not going to be required, and that we set placeholder here that is going to be of value props.placeholder. Save this, and here we go, the placeholder is visible. And the next thing that we're going to have to do is create this image that should be pressable and something should happen. What, I don't know yet, but whatever. It seems like we have to press it because there's this check now text here. So I actually already imported that image and called it highlighted image. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a pressable so that this is pressable. And then I'm going to set up an image and I'm going to give it the source of 2 directories up: assets, images, and highlighted image. And then again, I'm going to give it resize mode of contain so that it's contained in whatever I define. And have an error because I forgot to close the parentheses. And now if we look here, we see that this image is actually huge. So we need styles definitely. So we're going to need a style for the image itself, and let's call it highlighted image. And we're going to need a style for the container as well. And I'll show you why. So if we go to the highlighted image and say that its width is 100%, because it should take up all the space except of margins. And then we need some height, which is going to be vertical scale 160. Yep, I correctly. We're going to see that it takes up the whole space. And even if we were to apply the margin horizontal 24 here, it's just going to be using it from the left side, and on the right side, it's going to use the width 100% that we defined here, which we don't want to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a highlighted image container. We're going to say that its margin horizontal is 24. So let's apply that style here, and let's say highlighted image container. And that's it. This is looking great. And in the next video, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be building select category list that will be using our newly created reducer that we're going to do together in the next video. So stay tuned. We are having great progress. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hi, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be building select category infinite scroll items, where we're going to include all of the categories that we're going to create in our reducers. And as the user is going to be scrolling, we're going to be paginating internally so that more new items appear. So for that, actually, we're going to be practicing what we constructed together in this module. And you will see after all this setup, how to create a new reducer, put it in the combined reducers, and start using the data defined there. So for that, we're going to need to open up our editor. And here we're going to create a new reducer. And let's call it categories. .js. So we're going to need to import create slice from Redux Toolkit. And then we're going to be creating a constant for our categories. It's going to use this create slice with the options passed in. And we're going to say that its name is categories and that it has an initial state. I'm going to skip defining the initial state for a bit. And then I'm going to say that it has reducers that are going to be empty for now. And we're going to export categories by default and its reducers. So once this is done and saved, we're going to create a new constant for our initial state. And this is going to be an object, and it will contain all of the categories that we're going to use. And I'm going to just paste it here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a selected category ID, and it's just going to be by default set to 1. And then we're going to use this initial state here. And we're going to say that we need a reset categories action that will just return initial state. It's always the practice to have a resetter. And we're also going to need update selected category ID. And it's going to take state and action. And we're going to say that state.selected category ID is whatever we passed in to this function. And we're going to need this because users are going to be able to click on the items and activate them. And it would be great to keep track of the selected items in the store here. So then we're going to need to export these actions. So let's create export const and copy these here so that we're able to use it from our components. And we're going to say that this is equal to categories.actions. And then we're going to use this categories reducer here in the store so that we are actually able to use it. So we need to import this, and let's just copy this line and create one categories. Great. And now we will go to our home screen and we create a categories selector here. And we say state.categories console log the value of the categories, we should be able to see it. Let's load it. Yep, it's here. That's great. So it's available for us to use for our flex list. However, in this video, since we did the setup, I don't want to make this video too long. So if you want to set up the categories with me, please come back to the next video and I'll see you there. Thanks so much for watching. Hi, and welcome back to this video. Today, we're going to be building the flat list for our categories, and we're going to be displaying it on our home page. So right now we have nothing displayed here, even though we do have the categories in our reducer. So let's get to work. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is create a view container for our categories, and I'm going to style it with the style.categories. And I'm going to create the style here. And let's see what styling we need exactly. So as I know, we have a margin of 24 on the left side here. And this is actually taking up the full rest of the width. So all we need to do here is say margin left, horizontal, scale 24. Now we still see nothing on our simulator because we haven't created the flat list. So let's place it inside our view. So let's create the flat list and import it from React Native. And it's requesting some data from me. So I'm going to use this categories here. And I'm going to say that we need categories.categories because that is what we defined inside our reducer. So this is called categories reducer, but in the state inside, we also have the categories variable. So we need to access that. And then for rendering the items, what we're going to do is we're going to take in each item and we're going to render the items according to that. What we're going to need for each of the items is a view container. And this view container will have a style, and we're going to call that style category item. And we need this style because we have a margin on the right side of each category, and it is 10. So we're going to have to define that on our view container. So let's create the category item styling here. And let's say that we have a margin right of horizontal scale 10. And then what we need is this list to be laid out horizontally and not vertically, which is the default value of the flat list. So let's say horizontal, true. And then we don't need the horizontal scroll indicator showing there. So let's set it to false. Now, since we have a bunch of items in our categories, what we don't want to happen is our editor asking us to have a unique key for each one of them. So let's say that we're going to take the category ID defined for each item, and that's what is going to be its own key. And inside this, we're going to use the tabs that we created. It would have been better if I just called it categories, but no, I already called it tabs. So I'm just going to use it like that, and I'm going to import it. And it has some required props. First required prop is the name. So I'm going to use item.name here. And they're all visible and they're all selected. And we don't really want that to happen. So we have an is inactive state here. And we're going to say that if the items category ID that we're displaying is not equal to the selected category, so categories.selected category ID that we have defined in our reducer, then it has to be inactive. And then we see it being inactive, but we do want to be able to press and activate, right? So we're going to take care of that. Let's go to our tab component and explore how we can do that. And we see that we have an onPress event, but we never use the category ID here, which is bad because what we want to do is onPress, we want to dispatch an event, and that event is going to be updating selected category ID. And we're going to have to pass it the category ID that we want to make the update to. We made this function inside our reducers. It's right here. So it is expecting some kind of data to be passed to it. But right now, we don't handle that on press. So let's say that on press, we're going to get some value and we're going to use that value to update our category. So if I press here, nothing really happens. And for that, we're going to have to define one more prop here. Let's call it category ID, or rather than tab ID, just because we called this a tab component. And let's say that this is required and it is going to be a number. So if it's not passed, our simulator is going to be yelling at us, saying that it is required, but its value is undefined. So we're never going to miss doing this. And then on press, we're going to say pass as a value to the function that we're calling props.tabID. Let's save this, go here, and we should be all good as long as we pass a tab ID, which is going to be item.category ID. And now if we press here, nothing's really going to be happening because this onPress event is not actually firing. And the reason it's not firing is because we have disabled the prop according to is inactive state, which we don't want to do, actually. Let's delete it. And now if we press here, we should be able to see that these ones actually do activate, which is exactly what we wanted. And now to make this design much more similar to our design here, what we do need is the selected category title here. So let's do that. I think that selected category is type 2. So let's create a header on our donation apps home screen. I'm going to do it here. And I'm going to put it in a view container. And I'm going to say that it is going to be a header with a title of select category, and that the type is going to be 2. And let's see how this works out for us. Yep, it's right here. And we do need some margin horizontal and margin bottom for this as well. So let's set up style.category header style. Let's go here. Let's say that we need margin horizontal of horizontal scale 24, and that we do need a margin bottom for it as well. And it's going to be vertical scale of, I'm just going to put in 10, but I am going to see what its real value is. And the real value is 16. So let's use that. Let's use that here. Let's open up our simulator. And this is looking pretty good, except for the fact that I think above we also need. So we need 20 above and 16 below. And let's see our highlighted image container. And this has some margin horizontal. And then highlighted image is contained in the height that we gave it. So actually, if we give this some background color, we're going to see that this margin bottom is coming from this image given here. What we would need to do is apply a little bit of margin top to the select category header. So let's say margin top is just vertical scale 6. And this seems to me it's equal. And what we're going to do in the next video is we're going to set up a pagination so that not all the categories are visible right away. And they're just visible as the user is scrolling, because I think this would be a good experience for you guys, just in case you are communicating later with the APIs that would give such data in a paginated way. So we're going to pretend that this should be paginated as well. And we're going to set up the infinite scroll pagination for our flat list. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing how to create this pagination for our flat list that we have been talking about. So great, what we're going to need is a paginating function, and we're going to have to control the state of these items as well. But we are going to be getting a whole list of categories from our reducer still. And we're going to have to define some initial states. So we're going to need to use state for those. I'm just going to sort the selectors and dispatches so that they're exactly visible as we need them to be. And then what I want to do is create a constant for category pages here and a setter for category page. And by default, let's say the categories are on page 1. And then what we're going to need is the truncated list of the items that should be visible. And as the user is going to be scrolling, we're going to be adding more items as needed. So we're going to say that we're going to need a category list and a setter of this category list. And initially it's going to be empty. And now we're going to have to use this category list here instead of categories. And that is going to get rid of our flat list because there's no data to be displayed. But what we're also going to do is define how many items of the categories should be displayed on our page at the initial state on the page 1. And as the user scrolls, how many items per page do we want to get? So I think if we say that category page size for each page is 4 items should be good enough for us to see the results. And then what we need to do is we're going to have to build this pagination function. So I'm just going to call it pagination. And we're going to say that it takes the items list that we're paginating through, and it needs a page number that we're on, and that it needs page size. And then we're going to create a function that gets the starting index. And the starting index is going to be page number -1 page size. And the ending index is going to be whatever starting index was plus the page size so that we get that many elements. And then let's check that if starting index is more than or equal to the whole list of items that we have, then we just want to return an empty array because there's nothing to return. And otherwise, we're going to use the items and slice it and give it the starting index and give it ending index so that we get exactly the part of the array of categories list that we're going to be using that represents exactly that page's items. So then what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to display some items on the page load. And we're going to use effect for that. And we're going to say that on page load, okay, set the category list to pagination, and let's give it initial setup. So let's give it the categories list. Let's say that page number is whatever category page is. And let's say that page size is whatever category page size is. And then we're going to have to increase the category page because we're going to be fetching the data for the first page already. So we're going to say set category page to previous state plus 1. Now, if we save this, well, first we need to import the use effect. If we save this, let's check that we're using category list here. Great. We should be able to see the first 4 items, but when we scroll, nothing is really happening. We don't have anything for the pagination function here. So what we need to set up from our previous flat list knowledge, I hope that you do remember. If not, then you can always hop back to that video where we first explored our flat lists. We're going to need an on and reached threshold, and we're going to say that it's 50%. And whenever the user scrolls through the 50% of the items that they have displayed, we're going to fetch more items for them so that they don't have to wait up on the fetch once they completely reach the end. And then we're going to say that on end reached, we're going to call a function. And what that function will do is, first of all, get the new data. And to get the new data, we're going to use pagination, and we're going to pass it the categories list. We're going to pass it the current page number, and we're going to pass it the category page, and we'll pass it the category page size. So should get us the new data, but then we want to use this new data to set the category list, right? So we're going to say if new data's dot length is more than 0 and it did return us something other than an empty array, then we want to reset the category list, and we're going to grab the previous state, and we're going to say return an array with all the items in the previous state plus the new data. And also, we're going to have to update the page so that we're ready for the next fetch when the user scrolls more. So we're going to say set category page to previous state plus 1. So now let's say that we console log here that user has reached the end, and we are getting more data for page number and then category page. And now let's save this and let's reload our application. And we see that once we reload, we have the first 4 items here. But if we start scrolling and we scroll through the half of the items, we're going to see user has reached the end, or we're getting more data for page number 2. And if we scroll more and we reach halfway through our data again, we're going to see that we're getting more data for page number 3. And that's going to continue so until we reach the end and we see the arts and craft supplies, which is our last element here. And actually, if we console log category list dot length, which should tell us how many items are inside our category, we should be able to see that it increases up to 13. And we did get this item many more times because we don't control when we're loading the data, which we technically could. So we could say that we have an is loading and set is loading categories, and it set is loading categories here, which has a state of false here. And we could say that set is loading categories here is true. And then once it is done with that, it is false again. And then what we could do here is the same. Let's set is loading categories to true. And then let's set is loading categories to false. And here we can have a check. And if we're already is loading categories, if it's true, we can return and not do anything. So now if we reload our application again, we can see that even if we scroll through really fast, we're going to be only loading the categories when we're not actually calling and updating the categories already. So we have a list of 13 items here. And if we go here, we actually have 13 items here as well in our reducer, which means that our scrolling is working just fine. And we're able to paginate through the items, and we're able to click on the items and activate them. So this is great. We're all done with paginating our flat list. And what we're going to do in the next video is set up a new reducer for our donation items And I can't wait for that because our categories are actually going to control which donation items are going to be visible on the screen. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hi, and welcome back to our video tutorials on React Redux. So today we're going to be talking about how to create a new reducer for the donation items so that we can select a category and select the items from our donation list that match up with those categories. I also want to talk about resetting and purging our stores. So we're going to be seeing an example in this video for that. So first, let's create the donations.js file, and let's create the slice here. Let's import it from Redux Toolkit, and then we want to be creating the donations, and we're going to use the create slice function for that and pass in some options. And first of all, we're going to give it a name that is going to be donations, and we're going to give it some initial state. And that initial state is going to be grabbed from an object that we are going to create here. An initial state is going to have items for the donation items, and it's also going to have a selected donation ID that is going to be set to null. And the reason we're going to be needing this selected donation ID is because whenever a user clicks on this item, what we want to do is we want to redirect them to a new page and save the selected ID so that we can display the information according to the selected donation ID. Now what we're going to do is create some reducers, and we're going to have a reset donations reducer that is going to take in nothing and just return our initial state here. And then we're also going to have an updater for our selected donation ID, and it's going to take the current state and the action that we pass here and set the state.selected donation ID to whatever we pass here. Hello. Great. So now what we want to do is go here and create the donations and use the donations that we created inside here. And let's import it from here. But to do that, we're also going to have to export the reducer. So let's export default donations.reducer, and let's export these functions as well, set donations and update selected donation ID so that we can use it whenever we want. And those are going to come from the actions. Great. So now we should be having no issues here. And now if we go to our home page, let's just quickly console log what's inside our donations. So let's use the selector for that. Let's call it donations. And I'm going to get rid of this logger here so that we're able to see what we're console logging very clearly. And here I'm going to say console log. This is our current donations state, and then donations. So let's reload our application, and we see this is our current donation state, and then items are empty and selected donation ID is set to null. And what I'm quickly going to do here is I'm going to go and copy the items that we want to paste here. Great. So I have copied it and I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to save this, and we have this in our initial state right now that was set from here. And if I go to my homepage and check out what's inside my donation items, I'm going to see that there's nothing inside these items. And this is expected. And it is expected because whenever we created the donation slice for our store, what happened is that it already got the initial state, which was items that were empty, and it put it in the async storage and persisted the state. So the only way to update these items from now on is going to be from the reducer itself. So we either have to call a reset donations function that would reset our initial state for the donations store. Or the second way to do this is going to purge the whole store and reset everything like user settings, categories, and donations to its initial state. So first of all, I'm just going to quickly try that. To do that, all you need to do is say persister.purge here. And this file is naturally going to be called. So this function will work. And if I reload now, I'm going to see that donation state has a bunch of items inside it. But if I wanted to, what I also could do is go to donations. I'm quickly going to get rid of this again. Okay, so let me copy it and get rid of it. And I'm going to leave the purge function in. So it should have already ran, but I'm going to reload. And now my items are empty. So if I get rid of this, I want to show you the different way as well. And put the items back here and go to my home page. If I were to reload, my items should still be empty because I haven't dispatched any action. But if I dispatch from here, reset donations. Now let's import this quickly. And let's reload. I'm going to see that because I use the reducer, all of my items are back here. So whether you decide to purge or whether you decide to reset from the donations here or your reducers, it's your choice. But if you're ever facing an issue where you want to overwrite the items and you don't get the updated values, it's because you need to purge or you need to reset the items specifically from your reducers. And I'm going to get rid of this now. And actually, I will leave these items here and it's going to be in the description of the video as well. But I will go in more details about what's defined here and why we might need it in the next video. And in the next video, we're also going to set up the donations items to be shown up here. So thanks so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Hi, and welcome back. Today, we're going to do a quick session about how to grab the donations according to the categories that we are going to be selecting here. So as I mentioned already, we want to make sure that we run some kind of function to select the items from our items list here in the donations reducer according to the category ID that is selected. So we have that information inside the categories reducer. Here we store selected category ID, and we should match this ID with the IDs that are present in the category IDs array. So what we have to do is run a function every time the selected category item changes. So we can grab that information from the store and we can say categories.selected category ID. So every time this changes, we run this function. So let's say console log, run this function. So first of all, it is going to run right when the application launches. Here we go. Whenever we press here, because the items are updated in the store, we're going to get this console log here, which means that every time the selected category ID updates, we can run this function given here. So what we can do is grab the items from the donations.items. And then what we can do, let's console log these items. Okay, so every time we press now, we're going to get these items from the donation. And we want to filter on this item. So let's create const filtered items. And let's say filter these items and give me back the items that has category IDs that includes the selected category ID. So now if we console log the filtered items and we rerun our application, when we press on highlight, we are only going to get those items that are inside highlights. So highlights category ID is 1. I know this. So here we see 1 and 2 that includes 1, and 1 and 3 that also includes 1, 1 and 5, 1 is there, 1 and 9, 1 is there, 1 and 8, 1 is there, so you get the point. Now, let's try something else. I know that for arts and crafts, we only have 1 item. So if I press here, we're only going to get 1 item that has a category ID of 13, which is the category ID of arts and craft supplies. So this function is working. Now what we want to do is make sure that we set the donation items list to the filtered items so that later we can use it to display those items here. And here I'm going to quickly create a constant for donation items, and I'm going to create set donation items as well. And initially it's going to be an empty array, but every time a category changes, we're gonna set the donation items to the filtered items. In fact, we can even make this smaller here and just delete this and say that we are directly filtering these items, and we can put the items here. And now we can console log donation items and then reload our application. And now our art and crafts are selected. So the first thing that we got was for art and crafts, but let's reload and click on highlight. And we're going to get the items only for highlighted donations. If we click on education, we're only going to get the items for the education. And I think the education ID is 3. So if we go further and use the tools and hardware, we're only going to get 2 items with a category of 12. And if we click here again, we're only going to get 1 item with the category ID of 13. So great. Now this is working, and we're going to be using this in the next video to display those items from here and donation items on the screen. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hi, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be working on selecting a category and showing the list on this page here. So first things first, we are going to create a view container for our donation items. And what I want to do is I'm just going to quickly collapse these items so that you're clearly able to see what I'm working on. So let's create a view container and give it a style. And the style is going to be donation items container. And let's create that style over here. And let's see what we need for that. So I'm going to go to our donation mobile app, and we need a margin top, and we're going to need a horizontal margin of 24. So let's do that. Let's give it margin top of vertical scale 20, and let's give it margin horizontal of horizontal scale 24. And I missed the opening brace here. Great. So now that should be applied here. And now what we want to do is put these items inside here. And to do that, we are going to use a mapping function. So let's create something like this. First of all, let's say if there are nothing inside our donation items that we created here and we set it, then don't show it. So only show it if the donation item's length is greater than 0. Otherwise, we don't want to see it. And then we're going to say map over these values and create a single donation item component for each one of those. And let's give it some kind of key so that they're uniquely identified. And for that, we're going to be using value.donation item ID that is going to be passed through here, because every donation that we created, every donation item has its own donation item ID. So we're going to use it here. Then I will definitely need to import this component here. So let me do that. Let's import single donation item. And then the single donation item will definitely need some props. So let's set up those props here. Now I'm getting some error because I need donation items inside. And then I'm getting some bunch of other errors that are going to be resolved very soon. First of all, I do need a price. And the price of each donation item is presented as a string here. So we're going to have to make sure that they are converted to numbers and to not lose anything that comes after point here. We're going to have to use the floats. So I'm going to say parse float and use value.price for this. I'm also going to need batch title. And batch title is going to be a little complicated because all we know is what category have we selected. So we're going to have to find the category name from here for the selected category ID. So since we know what category we have selected, what we're going to have to do here is do categories.categories and then filter and only get the value that actually I can't use this value here because I already used it here. So I'm just going to call it val instead. So only get the value for which the category ID is equal to categories.selected category ID. So filtering functions will give us back an array. So it only will contain one element, I'm sure. And from that element, we want to grab the category name. So let's save this. And then we also need the donation title. And donation title is going to be value.name, which we have set up here. We need the URI attribute for the image. So that is going to be value.image. Save this. Let's reload our application. Okay, and now we see everything shown up here. But we have something different going on here. We see that our images are contained inside the dimensions that we gave it. So it doesn't lose its scaling, and then our highlight category here is shown in a weird way. So what we do want to do is change the resize mode contain to cover. And now it's going to cover the whole dimension that we gave it. And moreover, we might want to create some kind of border radius for this. So let's go to image and see if we have any kind of border radius on this. Do we have anything? Yeah, border radius is 20. So let's set border radius horizontal scale 20 here so that these are shown in a nicer way. And then what else do we need here? Let's go to our single donation item, and we want this to be pressable, which it is not currently. So instead of view, let's create another component here called pressable. And let's make this pressable. And on press, what we're going to have to do is call the props.onPress function and pass it the donation item ID that was selected. So here we're going to need an onPress prop types dot function, and it doesn't have to be required. So let's create single donation item default props here and say that onPress by default is going to be an empty function. And then what we also shouldn't forget is that our single donation item does not accept a donation item ID prop. So let's do that. Let's make this required and say that prop type should accept a number that is required for donation item ID. And now we're getting an error saying that's missing. So let's pass it here and say that the donation item ID is grabbed from our values. Okay, so now if we were to press on an item, we could get the selected donation ID. And let's make sure everything's set up here. Okay, let's load this and let's press on this. And now we're getting the ID for this. And this is 2 and this is 4 and this is 11. So this is working just fine. And we don't need this here. I'm just going to leave it empty. Oh, and there's one more thing that I wanted to mention. If we reload our application right now, we see that our selected category is going to be highlighted automatically. And if we were to change this selected category to environment, our items are going to change according to those. So this is working just fine. You can try it yourself. You have the array that you can copy from our description of the video. And that's all. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video where we're going to be styling this in a grid. Hi, and welcome back to our course on donation application with the Redux Toolkit. Today, we're going to be putting these items that we designed using single donation item component in a grid so that we see two items in a row. And to do that, we are going to need a view container for each single donation item. So let's do that. And then we're going to have to switch this key to the view container because this is going to be the parent element that is generated using map. And if we don't do that, then our simulator might start yelling at us. So right now we're going to need to apply some styling to this view container. So let's create a style.single donation item. And let's create it here. And let's say that its max width can be 49%. And that is because we want to place two items next to each other. Plus, we want to have some kind of space in between. So let's make sure that we do that. For that, we're going to have to apply some styling to the donation item container. So let's say that we want the direction to be row. Great. And then let's say that we want some space in between the items. So we're going to need justified content space between. And even after that, we see that these items are just stacked in a row and they are not really wrapping, for which we can use a flex property called flex wrap. And we're going to say that it should wrap. Great. Now they are next to each other, but there is no space in between. And for that, we can say 48% maybe, or maybe even less, like something like 46%. But as we're looking at it, actually, this margin horizontal that we had here is getting discarded, which we don't want to do. So let's put this to 49% back. And let's go to the single donation item. And let's tell these images to have a little bit of less width, such as 150 maybe, or maybe even 140. Okay, this looks much better. Great. And now we also need some kind of margin bottom for these items because we see that this picture comes right after this text here. And I'm pretty sure that our design will have some kind of margin. So let's see what that is. That is approximately 23. So let's go to our home styles and let's say that single donation item should have a margin bottom of vertical scale 23. Okay, great. This looks much, much better. But what does not look better is this reps text here. And in our designs that were given to us, here we see that if the name is too long, it's continued with this 3 dots and it doesn't really show fully. So let's go to our single donation item. And as we see, the donation title is shown using the header. So what we want to do is actually say that this particular header should have number of lines set to 1. And then what we can do is we can go to header component. And here we can say that we create a new prop here, say number of lines that is going to be prop type number. And then here we can pass number of lines saying props dot number of lines. And now we see that our title has been converted to a text with 3 dots given here, which means that we are matching our design requirements. But what we don't want to happen is that if number of lines is not passed, we don't want to limit it. So if we pass number of lines null, it would show like this. So we're just going to say here, if props number of lines is available, then props number of lines. Otherwise, we are going to pass null. So this won't mess with our header components that we have used at other places where we actually don't need those 3 dots. That's it for this video. In the next video, what we're going to be doing is on press of an item, we're going to be redirected to a new page that is going to grab the information about the selected donation item and display it on the screen. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Welcome back to our tutorials. Today, what we're going to be doing is anytime a user presses on these items, we're going to make sure that we redirect our users to the appropriate page, which is going to be a single donation item page, and that they can read information about this. So the first thing that we're going to need is definitely a new screen, and we're going to call this screen single donation item. And here we are going to create 2 files, single donation item.js, and we're going to need this styling file for that as well. So let's do the usual stuff. Let's import the style sheet and let's create the styles using stylesheet.create function. And let's make sure that we export this style so that we can import it here. And here we're just going to do an import of React and import of our styles. And we're going to create a constant for single donation item that is going to be a functional component returning null so far. And let's export default single donation item. Great. So now we have set up this page, but in order to be able to access this page, we're going to have to take care of our navigation. So first of all, we're going to create a single donation item root. And then we're going to go to main navigation and we're going to say that there is another screen available to us and it's going to be single donation item. And we're going to import the screen that we just created from screens and not components. Great. Let's save this. And I shouldn't have parentheses here. Okay, all good with this. And then what we have to take care of is redirection from the home page. And here we're going to have to do something like this. First of all, we're going to have to update the selected donation ID, which we can do by dispatching update selected donation ID. And we're going to pass it the selected donation ID. And once we do that, actually, I want to change this function here in our, whoops, it shouldn't be a selected category ID. We should say update update donation, selected donation ID. Yep. Okay. So now once we go here, what we want to do is other than updating selected donation ID, what we want to also do is get the object of selected donation. So selected donation information should be an empty object by its own initial state. And here we're going to say that we're going to update the selected donation information. And we're going to have to find an item that has donation item ID equal to the payload that we passed here. And that should give us back the object itself. We should just say state.items here. Great. So now once we click here, we're going to have a state available that should contain the information about the selected donation item. And then what we want to do is go to our home screen. And here we should also say that we're going to use the navigation. And to do that, we're going to have to put it here. And then let's go to onPress function and say navigation.navigate to routes.single donation item. And we're going to have to import these routes. And now we can save this. And then what I want to do is once we get to this screen, I want to get that information item here. So we're going to have to do constant donation item formation is going to be equal to use selector that we should import from React Redux. And then we're going to get the state, and then we're going to get the donations, and then we're going to get selected donation information. And then we're going to console log donation item information to make sure that we get the information that we wanted to get. So let's reload our app. Now our categories are visible, great, and all of our items here are visible as well. And let's click on this item. Great, we're redirected to a new screen. It doesn't really show anything to us, but it does grab the information about the item that we pressed. So if we go back and then we press something else, it will get information for that other item. Great, we have set this up. And in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to use this information to create the design that matches our given design for the single donation item. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hi, and welcome back. We're very close to our finish line for this application. So far, to finish up this module, all we have to do is create this page here. And we're going to start off by setting up the back button so that we're able to navigate to the back page here in our application. And I'm going to make this into a component because we have this button on another page as well that we're going to be working on later once we set up our payment system. And I want to be able to reuse our code as much as possible. And you should always be thinking about reusability when you're creating your screens and components. So we're going to make this into a component because we want our code to be reusable. And we're going to start with the back button navigation. So we're going to create a new component and we're going to call it back button. And inside this component, we're going to create a new file and we're going to call it backbutton.js. And we're going to create a style.js file as well. And since our single donation item styles is already empty, I'm just going to copy this code and I'm going to go to back button and I'm going to paste it there. And here we can do the same. Single donation item has just been set up. So let's just use that. And instead of single donation item, we're going to use back button. And let's export that. We don't need this here. And we can delete this as well. And now we have our back button initial step complete. And what we do want to do is make sure that this back button shows up on the screen. And I don't know if you're noticing or not, but our screen is gray right now. So we're going to have to take care of that here. Let's start with that. First of all, I'm going to move this up. And I'm also going to use the safe area view. And I'm also going to use the scroll view from React Native to set this page up. And then I'm going to do safe area view here. And I'm going to use some global styles for this. And inside it, I'm going to put the scroll view. And I'm going to say that shows horizontal vertical scroll indicator should be false because we don't want to be seeing it when our screen is going to be scrollable. Let's save this. And now let's apply some styles from our global styles that are very good that we have set it up because we do want this reused as much as possible. And let's import the global styles here as well. Let's save it. And now we see that part of our screen is white. And because of that, we're going to be using the flex as well. That's set up in our global styles. So now whole our screen is white. And what we do want to do here is put the back button component that we just created. And let's import this component. And I'm going to organize our code and put the styles last. And then what I want to do is go to the back button here. And I want to start creating this component. First of all, let's start with the fact that it is pressable, right? So we're going to have to use the pressable component and we're going to have to import it from React Native. So let's import pressable from React Native. And on press, we want something to happen. And what should happen exactly is going to be handled from the parent component. So we're going to have to use props. And because we're going to have to use props, we're going to have to import prop types. And we're going to say here that we're expecting an onPress prop that is going to be required, and it's going to be a function. And we're going to say here onPress use props.onPress function. And inside here, we have the back arrow. So we're going to have to use a font awesome icon for that. So let's do that. And then let's search for FA arrow left. And yep, it exists. And we're going to use the solid icon for that. And then again, I'm going to sort these and I'm going to put those here. And let's save this. And now we see the back button here, and our simulator is complaining that you're doing nothing on press. So let's go to single donation item and say that on press, what we want to do is use the navigation. So here we're going to say navigation, and we're going to say navigation. And to go back, we're going to use a function called go back. So now if we were to press on this arrow, we would just go back, but we do want to style it. And let's start with the fact that we have for the whole page some kind of margins. So we have margin horizontal of around 20. So let's create a style for our scroll view, and let's just call it container. And let's go to our styles here, define a container. And we're going to say that margin horizontal is horizontal scale 20. Great. Now we do want to set this button up better and follow our designs. So for that, we're going to go to styles, and we're going to say that we need a container here as well. And that container is going to define what's the background color. So let's just copy it from here and say background color is this. And then it's going to have some height and width, and it's 44 for width and height. And again, our vertical scaling and horizontal scaling is going to be returning different values. And we have to make sure that they are equal because this is a square. So I'm going to use horizontal scaling for both. And I'm going to say width horizontal scale is 44. Height horizontal scale is 44. And we're going to have some kind of border radius for that as well. And I think because the color is so gray, you might not be able to see it clearly. So for a while, I'm going to change it to something different and save it so that you can see it better. And then I'm going to apply it to our pressable. So let's say style.container. And now we see that this is a square. So we definitely do need a border radius. So let's find out how much that is. Here it's given that it's 26. So let's say border radius, horizontal scale, 26. And now this is circular, but we do want this icon to be centered here. So let's say align items center and justify content center. I think Flex 1 is automatically applied to every container that you make. So we don't need to define it explicitly here. However, if we did define it, nothing would really change. So we don't really need it. And now I'm going to go back to the original color. And great, that's it. We might need some kind of margin top, which is 7. And we can apply it on our single donation item here. And we can just apply it to our scroll view. Let's say margin top vertical scale 7. Great, so our back button is ready. And in the next video on one go, we're just going to design the whole screen given here. And we're going to be done with this module. So far, you've done amazingly well. Thanks so much for watching. And I can't wait to see you in the next video. Hi, and welcome back. I'm so excited to say that this is the last video in our series on using Redux and reducers in React Native. You've all done an amazing job learning how to use these powerful tools to manage state in your applications. And by now, you should have a solid understanding of how to use Redux to store and manipulate data and how to use reducers to update that data in response to actions. But this is not the end of our journey. It's just the beginning. And with the skills that you have acquired, you'll be able to build even more complex and sophisticated applications that are fast and efficient and easy to maintain. So let's take a moment to celebrate your hard work and dedication. You should be incredibly proud of yourselves for making it this far. And whether you're just starting out or you have been working with React Native for a while, you made great strides in your development journey. And today we're just going to be concentrating on building this screen for our donation items. And this is going to be the last screen that we're going to be building for this module. So let's get started. First of all, what I want to talk about is the fact that we're going to be needing the information about the badge here. And right now, what we could do is either select the categories from our single donation item screen to get the name of the category that we selected. But the problem is going to be that each item is connected to multiple categories. And I think it's going to be very interesting to explore one of the information that is useful to us because we have navigation. So each screen and comes with a parameter called root. And through the roots, you can pass params whenever you're navigating. So what I want to do is whenever a user selects something here, I want to grab the category that they have used here to select that item. So if they're navigated from environment, then we're going to show them the environment badge. If they were navigated from education, then that's what we're going to use. We could show multiple categories as well, but what I want to explore with you is how to use the params functionality from the root. Otherwise, you can feel free to just use the store and grab the information about each category, and that is not going to be hard for you. So I'm going to just explore something new with you and show you how to pass the params. So first of all, you can pass the params very easily here. You can pass any kind of param. For example, I can just pass name nada, for example. And if I save this and I go to single donation item to console log roots value and open my terminal, if I go to this item here, you're going to see all of the information that is passed through with root, and you're going to see that we have params attribute here and name is passed as nada. So what we could do is use these params to pass information about the category information. For that, I'm going to change the structure of the donation items a bit. Right now, we use the mapping function to directly return the component, but I want to reuse the code that we have here about the categories. And what I don't want to do is just copy this and just paste it here because that's going to be duplicated code and I don't want to teach you the best practices. So instead of this, we're just going to make this into a regular function body. And we're going to say that we're returning this component. And above that, we're going to define a variable and we're going to call that variable category information. And then we can just copy this, paste it here, get rid of the name so that we have the information about the whole object. And then we can use this category information.name to display the badges for the categories here. And then what I do want to do is just change the filtering here and just say find, because that's just more concise and we won't have to grab the first element and it's going to work the same way it did before. So we're going to see all of the categories here as we were seeing it before. And we can then just use this category information here. And in JavaScript, you could just say category information, and that would create a parameter with the name of category information, and it would give it the value of the category information variable here. So if we come here and console log root.params, and we go to this page here, we are going to see that our category information has been passed and its name is highlight. So we're going to be using this for our badge. Now let's just go to our design and see what we need. And we're going to see that the first thing that we need is an image that will have a margin top of 12 and margin bottom of 24. So let's just create an image. Let's import the image from React Native. And here we're going to use the donation item information.image to get the URI. And we are going to have to style it because otherwise this image is not going to show up on our screen, as you see. So let's go to styling and let's say that we want an image and that it should have margin top of vertical scale 12, margin bottom of vertical scale 24. And then let's say that its width is going to be 100% and it is going to have some height. And let's check out on our design how much that is. It's 240. So let's say height, vertical scale 240. And then we are going to need some border radius. So let's see how much that is. That is 5 pixels as given here. So we're going to use that information and say that border radius is horizontal scale 5. And now this image is going to have borders. And since we already have all the information that we needed about the badge, let's say that we have a constant here called category information, and we're going to use root params for that and dot category information. And then what we're going to do is set up a badge here, and its title is going to be category information dot name. And now the highlight is showing up here, and we're going to put this into a view container because the badge will also need some margin bottom. So let's use the view container from the React Native library. And let's set up a style for this called badge. And let's create it here. And let's see how much margin bottom this badge needs exactly. So that is 16. So let's say margin bottom vertical scale 16. And then we see that we have a header component that we designed of type 1 given here. So we're just going to do header and we're going to import it from our components. And we're going to say that type is of type 1 and the title is going to be donation item information dot name. And if we save this, here we go. Our selected items title is here. And then we need some descriptive text. Okay, so we're going to need the text component from React Native and we're going to give it some styling and we're going to call it description. And here we're going to put information from the donation item information dot description. Here we go. And then we're going to need some kind of margin top and a little bit of margin horizontal as well, but it's not really given here. So I'm going to come up with something on my own. So let's go to this description in our styles. And let's say that it needs margin top of vertical scale 7 as given and margin horizontal. Let's say that it is 7 as well. And let's save this. Great. Our text is displayed in a similar manner as it is here. But we do need to follow the font stylings given here. So let's just get to that. Let's say font family is Inter and that font weight is 600 and line height is scale font size 29. Whoops. Actually, I'm looking at the wrong thing. So we need to grab it from here. So it is Inter with font weight of 400 and font size of 14. Great. So now this looks similar to here. And then we need a button, and that button should always be at the bottom, no matter how much content is given on the screens. And we're going to have to take it out of the scroll view because otherwise that button will be placed here because our content ends here. So let's create it outside of scroll view and let's put our button in this view and let's use our component for that. So it will be import it from our components, and the title is going to be donate, and on press, so far it is going to do nothing. Great, so this is already shown at the bottom of this, and then what we need to do is just give it some horizontal margins. So let's call this button and create a style for this here. And then let's say margin horizontal is equal to 20 as for everything else on the screen. So great, now this is perfectly set up. But what we do need to take care of, if this text becomes very long, let's say we copy it multiple times here so that our screen becomes scrollable. We do see the text perfectly well, but let's apply to some more margin bottom to this text so that it's not so cramped up here. And let's say that margin bottom's value is going to be vertical scale 10. And now we're able to scroll more, and we have margin bottom of 10 compared to this button given here. So that's all. We are done with the screen. And now if we reload our application, where is it? And go to environment, we're going to see an environment badge and information about that item. If we go to education, we're going to see information about that specific education item. So everything is working out. And that's it. You've done exceptionally well. Thanks so much for watching and following so far. You have all the knowledge that you need about reducers. And in the next videos, we're going to be exploring some more interesting topics. So stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next video. In this section, we explored Redux Toolkit to enhance our data management system and created a fully functional donation application. With a focus on design and component building, we put our knowledge into practice and set up the necessary data to provide users with a comprehensive list of donation items. Throughout this section, we'll learn the core concepts of Redux Toolkit, including creating slices, combining reducers, configuring the store, working with actions, and persisting the store. Simultaneously, we integrated the visually appealing components we had built in the previous section to create an impressive user interface for our donation application. By leveraging the power of Redux Toolkit, we efficiently managed the application state and enabled users to navigate through the donation items, view detailed information, and engage with the application seamlessly. Building a robust data management system in the donation application showcases the ability to create scalable and maintainable applications. As we conclude this section, congratulations on your accomplishment in the donation application section. In the upcoming user authentication section, we will delve into the critical aspect of user authentication. We'll leverage the power of Redux Toolkit and Firebase to implement a secure user authentication system, enabling features such as user registration and login. By integrating Redux Toolkit, we'll efficiently manage the authentication state and provide a seamless user experience. This knowledge will not only empower you to create secure applications, but also provide a solid foundation for developing user-centric features in your future projects. Get ready to explore the realm of user authentication with Redux Toolkit and elevate security and user experience of our donation application to new heights. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next section.